Hello to the chicos, hello to the chicas. This is the recap video of round 2 from the World Cup in Goa, and today I'm going to present to you the game Harikrishna against Daniel Dardha. Harikrishna has scored a marvelous victory in the previous round, and now again he is playing very cool and spectacular chess, and we are going to take a look at how this classical Sicilian played out to be in the Indians' favor. So bishop g5, the biggest main line here, e6, queen d2, a6, this is all stock standard, and knight takes c6. Now, we need to reflect on this a little bit, or I feel the need that I need to, because 20 years ago, such moves would have been brushed off by more experienced players as, no, that's positional, you know, blunder. We strengthen black center, we give them the b file. This is not a chess move. Go back to the drawing board, start again. And then the engines actually started pointing out to us humans that knight takes c6 in the classical Sicilian is far more playable in far more positions than we initially thought. Not only is it playable, but in fact many a time it is the best course of action. A little bit of a historical insight for you. After a6 castles h6, this variation, the a6 h6 line, used to be in fashion in the 90s. So much so, in fact, that yours truly was influenced by said fashion, and I play this variation with both colors. There have been multiple very cool Anand Kramnik games for this line. The idea was that after bishop e3, black would play bishop e7, f4, knight d4, bishop d4, b5, bishop d3. Very sharp positions, yada yada yada. Karpov, with the white pieces, preferred here the positional bishop f4. Note that it's not blundering a fork on account of the pin. And so the idea is to pressure d6, but here after bishop c6, bishop d7, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6, now black regains the e4 pawn in turn. So queen e1 or f3 were the theoretical moves, and then d5, queen e1, bishop b4 was the main line back in my youth. And Karpov did play this with white and won a fair few games, but objectively speaking, black is very close to equality. And then in the early 2000s, people started to realize that actually it's better to take c6 right away, pawn takes back, play bishop f4, hitting d6, provoking d5, and then the queen maneuver, queen to e3, combined with bishop e2, then queen g3, creating pressure down here, occasionally sliding in here through c7. This has become the greatest rage of fashion, and white traditionally scored really well. And in reality, in my view, this was the line that put the knight takes c6 ideas in earnest on the map of the classical Sicilian. And now, another 10 years later down the track, you find that the white players take on c6 left and right and center whenever it's available, and it turns out to be an okay move. Now, that being said, I am still not sold on this particular capture here, and I will tell you why in a moment. So bishop e7, stock standard. I quite like how black is playing this. Bishop takes f6, standard Rouser operation we take, since bishop takes f6 loses the pawn, and so black has to take back with the g. Now, there is nothing untoward about the pawn recapture for black whatsoever. One of the most commonly occurring pawn structures, in fact, in the in the classical Richter Rouser, black is totally fine here. He's more than, well, not more, but sufficiently compensated by the pair of bishops, the semi-open files, and the fact that although white's position optically looks a lot more pleasant to play, we are pretty much reduced to two main concepts. One, try to play f4, f5, and two, which is not really a concept but more of a side effect of the structure, that we have easier moves to play than black. Because black needs to navigate very carefully the landscape so that the position doesn't suddenly open up, because then the king in the middle could be hurt. So, in this position, we are playing bishop c4. Now this is obviously provoking d5, but that would actually invite the situation that I talked about where the position blasts open too soon. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, there is an idea here where we can just sack a piece and be very, very happy with ourselves, because the black pieces will be tied down in all kinds of very, very ugly ways. For example, rook b8, bishop c6 check. Actually, that's game over. Never mind. So let's go rook a7, bishop c6 check, bishop d7, and this is where the smart and key move comes in, queen e3. Now that creates a very obnoxious pin here. It hits the rook. It prepares to take on d7 and bring the other rook. Morphy-esque chess. White is winning. So d5 is too soon. And so what black needs to do, and this is going to get increasingly harder and harder, is to sit tight, float d5, but only play it when it's optimal, and try to play useful moves in the interim. So bishop b7 played, hard to argue with. Rook e1, developing beautiful chess, by the way. Always highlight this to you guys in every video I make. Grandmasters do the basics impeccably well. Basics. Everybody developed castle, the rooks on the central files, which is where the action will likely take place. This is what we teach beginners. Sub 1000 chess right here, as far as what we are aiming for. Queen a5, king b1. Now this is a cheeky move that occasionally floats knight d5 ideas. For example, if I were to castle here, then now knight d5 wins the chess game, because queen d2 is not check, and so I can take a bishop on e7 with check, then retake the queen, and then even if I can't evacuate the knight, I will take down a few pawns with me on the way out, creating a winning endgame. So black needs to be cautious here. They played queen c5 to dodge this diagonal, but this was actually the first step towards a very slippery slope. Pawn h5 is a very standard move in this position for black. The idea is twofold. One, simply trying to push the pawn a bit further down and then pester white on g2. But the more important immediate effect of h5 is that queen h6 ideas are no longer playable. And now is the time when, yeah, I can play bishop b3, but if black doesn't do anything too stupid, then now white is also running out of useful moves. I can try f4 to play for f5, but now d5 is going to come on in a timely manner because the king is safe. Note that knight d5 is no worries. We take the queen, we lose the bishop, but now the king steps up, takes the knight. No problems for black whatsoever. In fact, I prefer to play this with black every day of the week. So, Dardha played a really, really good opening until this point where he committed to queen c5. So the two problems with this move is that, well, actually it's really one. And that one big problem is that it walked into knight a4. That is the biggie here. So Dardha played here d5. Castles would have been similarly met by knight a4, and again we see that there is a bit too many weak dark squares in the black camp. So if I swing across, let's say to h5, then I can now start pestering black around a king, and it turns out that this king position is very vulnerable. Note this pin, for example. And now I'm picking off a6 and I'm winning the game. So yeah, castles is no bueno. They played d5. But now comes the very, very, very brilliant positional concept of c4. And we go like, well, we are more than happy to open this position up, since this king is not safe anymore in the middle, nor is it safe on the king side or queen side. So from here on out, Dardha's defense is incredibly challenging. And in fact, right after c4, he made a blunder, but one that is super easy, in my opinion, to make. And most humans would have made that blunder. D takes c4 is best according to the engine. Most people wouldn't even consider this as a candidate move because it opens up the check. But it turns out that the check is actually harmless, and black is kind of alive in this game. I mean, objectively and optically, this looks horrid. So I don't blame Dardha for trying to hold it together by playing rook d8. But the cruel engine immediately points out that this is a blunder, and what is to come is just utter carnage. Take, and knight c3. I think this is the move that Dardha may have missed. That here, there is no d4, there is no de4. He tried de and lost promptly. d4 is perhaps even worse. We have check, and now the rook lift with rook g3 mate is instantly decisive. Game over on your bike. That is done dusted. de4 was played in the game. Hardly better. Check. King f8. Queen h6. Takes. And rook lift. And again, this is as good as over. I wanted to show you though here I found another cool idea. Which was rook d1. Queen b6. And then bishop e8. Now this is a very, very unique motive that you don't see very often. White is simply threatening to play rook d7 and then bishop takes f7 mate. And there is no good remedy whatsoever to be found against this. After bishop d5 I take, rook takes. Now rook d7 is on. And if I play a move like bishop e7 to try to shield the 7th rank, then out of the frying pan into the fire. Check. And now the queen is unguarded. But Harikrishna's move, the rook lift, the rook to e3, was perhaps even more human, logical. Now we're just going in for the mate. And of course, bishop c7, knight e4 is hardly an improvement from black's point of view. And here comes the marvelous finish. Rook takes e6, introducing a checkmate on e8, as well as introducing a checkmate on e6. And there is absolutely nothing to be done against the latter. If king f7, then check, king g7, and we are announcing a very cool checkmate pattern with queen f6 and bishop d1. Matutski. So, very interesting game. I am reluctant to celebrate the knight takes c6 idea on the whole as, you know, the ultimate key point to this victory for Harikrishna. I think that it was a bit of a surprise weapon that paid off big time because Dardha couldn't keep his cool in a position where he was under some pressure, but it was holdable. And the rest really is now history. Harikrishna pulled off a marvelous attacking game again. And he's definitely the Indian GM in the field who I expected, well, I wouldn't say the least because there were a few even lower rated GMs from India playing, but yeah, you wouldn't have put your money on Harikrishna going through round 1 and 2. I mean, he hasn't quite gone through round 2, but it looks like he's going to, with flying colors in marvelous games. So yeah, it's good to see that he's performing so well. And yeah, there is still a super exciting day 2 of round 2 ahead of us with many interesting games. So super excited to see what might come, and I look forward to covering that too. As for now, please don't forget to comment on this video, press the like button, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.